Dear students, in the introductory class about literary criticism, I had already told you about what is literature, what are the different approaches to literature, and what are the different types of literary criticism, and like that. Today, we are moving to our module 2. And module 2 is titled The Formalist Paradigm. As I have already told you, this module has two parts, part A and part B. In the part A, we have an essay, a critical essay written by Cleanth Brooks. Who is Cleanth Brooks? Cleanth Brooks is one of the foremost practitioners of new criticism school of literary analysis, or the formalist school of literary analysis. And the essay we have to study is The Formalist Critics. This essay was published in the year 1951, and it was published in the Kenyan Review. It was written as part of the My Credo series, appeared in the Kenyan Review in 1951. And in this essay, Cleanth Brooks tells us about the formalist paradigm of criticism, of literary criticism. I am reading page number 25. Part A, The Formalist Critics by Cleanth Brooks. First, let me give you the gist of what is there in page number 25. As an introduction to his essay, Cleanth Brooks talks about certain beliefs or certain faith that the people of literature or literary critics generally have with regard to literature and also literary criticism. He is giving us a list of beliefs, and if you go through your text, each belief is begun with that, a that clause, that, like that. So we will be going through each definition that is given about literature or literary criticism. We will be going one by one. So I begin the reading of the essay. Here are some articles of faith I could subscribe to. So what is the meaning of subscribe? In the modern scenario, in the contemporary scenario, all of you are aware of the term subscribe, right? Because the moment we see a YouTube video, you hear the words like and subscribe. Okay. And what is the meaning of subscribe here? You can take page number 35. And there you can see glossary. All the difficult words are explained there very clearly for you. So here, what is the meaning of subscribed to here? It means two meanings are given: to give consent or believe in. So Cleanth Brooks begins his essay stating some beliefs, some age-old beliefs about literature or literary criticism. Okay. So the first one, that literary criticism is a description and an evaluation of its object. So this is the first definition or the first assumption about literary criticism in the minds of people like us, or critics, or in the minds of any reader or any author. Okay, so that literary criticism, what is literary criticism? It is a description and an evaluation of its object. If we read a poem or if we read a story, okay, it is talking about an object, a particular thing. And when we criticize or critically analyze that particular text, we are describing that particular object dealt with in that text. And we are making an evaluation of the subject that is dealt with. So that is the first assumption. Now I am moving to the next faith. What is it? That the primary concern of literary criticism is with the problem of unity, the kind of whole which the literary work forms or fails to form, and the relation of the various parts to each other in building up this whole. So here, this assumption is about unity. What gives a literary work unity? So here, there is a reference to two aspects important to unity, the concept of unity, the whole and the parts. So if we read a poem or if we read a story or if we read a novel, there are different parts. Sometimes if it is a poem, there will be different stanzas. If it is a novel, there will be different chapters. Likewise, there are different parts to all those works. And when all these parts are combined together, it becomes the whole. And the correlation between the parts and the whole makes unity of the text. And according to some, the primary concern of criticism is to analyze this unity in a particular text. So now I am moving to the next assumption, that the formal relations in a work of literature may include, but certainly exceed, those of logic. So what does he say here? It is something about logic. So when we talk about literature or any work of art, we all understand that it is the result of imagination, basically. So it is something beyond logic. Okay, then the associations that we make with literature, they include those of logic. Whether there are something logically very clearly explained to us, or are they going beyond the logic of the human mind? That is, a work of art, when it is composed, it may go beyond logic, or the ideas may be expressed in a logical manner. So, the basic association that a literary critic makes with the work of art is to assess it in terms of its logicality. That is another point. And now I am going to the next point, that in a successful work, form and content cannot be separated. That form is meaning. So I told you we are going to talk about the formalist pattern of literary analysis. So we give importance to form. So what do we understand by form? What is the basic understanding of a form of a text? So take for example a poem. We have a title in the poem, we have different lines in the poem, we have different stanzas in the poem. This is the basic form or structure of a poem. The ideas may be the same, but the way that is expressed using particular words that differ. The style that may differ. And what we see printed on a text, that is the form, including the words, the length of the lines, the number of lines in each stanza, etc. So that is the form. And the idea that is conveyed through that form is content. So this is the basic difference, form and content. So before the formalist literary criticism, people believed that in a successful work, form and content cannot be separated. That form is also the meaning of the text. So this is the next belief. Okay, so now when we analyze the formalist literary paradigm, we are going to separate the form from the content. Earlier, there was no difference between this form and the content or the meaning of the text. So we were talking about the different beliefs or the different faiths that the people they had in their mind about literature and about literary criticism. And now I am going to the next belief, that literature is ultimately metaphorical and symbolic. So this is a very simple and at the same time very significant understanding of literature. What is it? Literature is ultimately metaphorical and symbolic. So if we look at a poem, if we read through a poem, there are a lot of things already underlined or already there beyond what is written in that poem. So there are a lot of other meanings we can decipher from that particular text. So in a way that is metaphorical in sense. And sometimes certain words they also act as symbolic also. So if a poem is talking about this is a red rose, he may not be meaning exactly the flower rose. Sometimes he might be pointing to his lover, pointing to his beloved. So the rose there, it becomes symbolic for the lover or the beloved. So likewise in literature we see the meanings in metaphorical or symbolic sense. So that is another understanding of literature. Now we are moving to the next belief. What is it? That the general and the universal are not seized upon by abstraction, but got at through the concrete and the particular. So what is the meaning of this understanding? For that, a note is given in the bottom of that page. You see, concrete and the particular. What do we mean by that? Like specific symbols presenting certain truths or acquiring a specific meaning. For instance, the image of the setting sun evoking death or light and darkness evoking good and evil, or earth as a mother image. So what is the meaning? Concrete and the particular means certain words, certain symbols, they have very concrete meaning. For example, light and darkness. Light means good and darkness means evil. So that is the concreteness that we give to certain words in literature. Okay, likewise, earth. Earth is always termed as Mother Earth, or the mother figure is always associated with the concept of earth. And another example that is given here is the setting sun. Okay, the setting sun, it symbolically refers to death. So that is the meaning of concrete imagery. And just the opposite is what we term as abstract or abstraction. What is the meaning of abstraction? I will give you an example. So think about a pen. If there is a pen in my hand, that pen, you can see it, okay, you can touch it, you know what is the use of that pen, and you can write with it. That is a concrete entity. Whereas, suppose I am telling you about love. How do you define love? So there are innumerable definitions for love with respect to the perceptions of different persons. So the concept of love is something that is very abstract, that we cannot define it. The idea of that particular concept, here for example love, the idea keeps on changing in relation to different contexts. Those nouns are called abstract nouns, you see. So pen or pencil or chalk or board or laptop, everything are concrete nouns, whereas love, pity, anger, etc. Okay, they are all abstract. So in literature we see a mixture of these two aspects, concrete and the abstract. So now we will go through the lines that is written here. What is it? That the general and the universal are not seized upon by abstraction. So again you can go through page number 35 and there it is given what is the meaning of abstraction. Considering as a general idea apart from concrete reality. So the general and the universal are not seized upon by abstraction but got at through the concrete and the particular. So we get the general understanding of a text, okay, which is also considered as the universal understanding of the text through the concrete images or the concrete words in that particular text. So this is another assumption about literature. We go to the next. That literature is not a surrogate for religion. What is the meaning of surrogate? Again, page number 35. Surrogate means substitute. Literature is not a substitute for religion. So, what is the significance of this sentence? I will give you an example. You might have heard of the Adam and Eve story in the Bible. So the Bible is basically a work of literature. And the story of the paradise and also the Adam and Eve is a piece of literature. But that has become an important part of the faith of the Christian church. So if we look at the Bible like that, is there any difference between literature and religion? But we feel that literature is very different from religion, that cannot act as a substitute for religion. So that is our faith. So for example, the epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana, we all have a lot of Indian epics. The beliefs, they all stand mingled with the stories that we find in the epics. All these epics are works of literature. But we are not ready to believe that literature is a substitute for religion. So this is another concept about literature. Next, we are going to the other assumption about literature. That, as Alan Tate says, specific moral problems are the subject matter of literature, but that the purpose of literature is not to point a moral. So again, we are going to the notes given in the bottom of the page. Who is Alan Tate? Alan Tate, the year is given there 1899 to 1979. Alan Tate is a poet and one of the major new critics. His major poetical works include The Winter Sea and The Two Conceits for the Eye to Sing, if possible. And his critical views are collected in On the Limits of Poetry, Selected Essays, 1928-48. So, who is Alan Tate? Alan Tate is an important critic in the new critic school of literary criticism. And according to him, he talks something about literature. What is it? Specific moral problems are the subject matter of literature, but that the purpose of literature is not to point a moral. So basically, for example, from our childhood onwards, we have heard a lot of stories told by our grandfathers, grandmothers, or our mothers. And at the end of each story, there will be a moral. So the stories that we hear, they are pieces of literature. And at the end, there is a moral attached to that story. So many people believe that literature has a moralistic concern. If there is literature, it should impart some moral. But according to Alan Tate, it is not the duty of literature to point out any specific moral. So Cleanth Brooks talks about that. And we come to the final belief. That the principles of criticism define the area relevant to literary criticism. They do not constitute a method for carrying out the criticism. So this belief or this assumption is particularly connected to the function of criticism. What does criticism do? The principles of criticism define the area relevant to literary criticism. They do not constitute a method for carrying out the criticism. So they are only giving us, literary criticism is only giving us certain principles so that our perspectives will be developed. our assumptions or our view of a work of literature will be enhanced or widened. So, the duty of literary criticism is to give some principles so that with that we will understand something. Then giving us a method for carrying out criticism. So these are the different articles of faith that Cleanth talks about in the beginning of his essay. So first he told something about literary criticism is a description and evaluation of its object. Then he told something about the unity. After that, he told us something about logic. Then he told us something about the interconnectedness between form and content. Then he told us something about the metaphorical and symbolic significance of literature. The next was on concrete and abstraction. Concreteness and abstraction. The next was literature is not a surrogate for religion. Then he pointed out to what Alan Tate told about morality and the association of moral problems with literature. And finally, he told us something about the principles of criticism and what does it result in. In the next paragraph, he is talking about these statements that he has made and what is the relevance of these statements or articles of faith in his essay and what he is going to say in continuation in this essay. Such statements as these would not, however, even though greatly elaborated, serve any useful purpose here. The interested reader already knows the general nature of the critical position adumbrated. Or if he does not, he can find it set forth in writings of mine or of other critics of like sympathy. So he says that all these statements are given just to give you a basic understanding about the previous knowledge that we have before the formalistic approach to literature. The meaning of adumbrated is given here to outline or sketch. Okay, all these statements are mere outlines so that you will be alarmed or you will be made conscious of the different thinkings that were there in our mind before going to the formalistic method of literary criticism. Moreover, a condensed restatement of the position here would probably beget as many misunderstandings as have past attempts to set it forth. It seems much more profitable to use the present occasion for dealing with some persistent misunderstandings and objections. And in continuation with these different articles of faith, he would like to talk to us about certain misunderstandings or objections that had seeped in the mind of the reader or the author regarding literature and literary criticism. With this, I end this session, and in the next session, I will be continuing our chapter. Thank you.